On the afternoon of November 24th, a blue car crashed into the gates of the Beihai City government in Guangxi. It was then struck by a black armored patrol vehicle. The scene was filled with smoke. After the car came to a stop, armed police and security guards surrounded it, using batons to strike it, causing loud noises. A man in white clothing was then dragged out of the car and taken away. Many bystanders gathered around, watching, discussing, and taking photos. No information could be found on Weibo, but numerous search records can still be seen on Douyin, including terms like Beihai City Government Crash Video, Beihai City Government Gate Accident Scene, Beihai City Government Gate, and large number of citizens at Beihai City Government Gate. Ms. Wang, a Beihai resident, confirmed the incident to overseas media. She said that after the event, the government blocked the internet, making it impossible to post anything. Ms. Wang was unsure whether shots were fired at the scene. She also didn't know why the driver crashed into the government building, but believed there must have been an injustice. It seemed unlikely that someone would crash into the government gates without a reason. Ms. Wang stated, "This is likely the first such incident in Beihai since the founding of the Communist Party. That's why the authorities are paying so much attention to it. It's a major event. The Beihai mayor just took office recently, less than a month ago." She believes the main issue is the current chaotic state within China, where the system is deteriorating further, and the public is very aware of it. The current mayor of Beihai, Li Gang, took office on October 17th of this year. Under the high political pressure from the Communist Party, coupled with the economic downturn, public resentment has been boiling over, leading to frequent social conflicts. There have been several shocking, indiscriminate attacks on innocent people. However, this case is different as it directly targeted the government. Overseas platform users commented, "Grievances have a source. Debts have an owner. This time, they finally got the right place. They finally hit the right target. Go China. They've finally figured out that crashing into the government, not the school, is the way to go." Warriors, the Chinese people are almost at their breaking point. In the environment of high pressure, arrests, and silence, some have begun to realize that the enemy is the government. The CCP has created all the suffering, and no one is having a good life. We hope the warriors stay safe. On November 24th, just before the third anniversary of the White Paper Movement, 2022 protests against the strict COVID-19 lockdowns, where demonstrators held blank sheets of paper to symbolize their opposition. An absurd scene unfolded at the Bund in Shanghai. Shanghai was one of the central locations for these white paper protests. A man planning to ride his motorcycle around China arrived in Shanghai and went to the Bund to take a photo in front of the Peace Hotel. However, as he reached into his backpack to pull out a flag he had with him for the photo, two civilian-clothes police officers suddenly approached and snatched the flag away. The man didn't even have time to raise the flag. Upon inspection, it was confirmed that the flag contained no reactionary content, only poetry and calligraphy. Despite this, the man was still required to cooperate with the police for an investigation before being allowed to leave. On X, users commented on the incident. Officers in civilian clothes outnumber tourists. 3 years since the White Paper Movement, and it's clear that it's not the people who are scared. The CCP is living in fear, with the regime's final days in sight. The CCP's oppressive rule over the public has intensified since Xi Jinping came to power, and conflicts between officials and the people continue to arise. Recently, the forced exhumation and cremation policy implemented in Guizhou province sparked fierce protests from local residents. If the Communist Party wants to dig up ancestral graves, they should start with Xi Jinping's family first. On November 22nd, 2 protests erupted in Xifeng County, Guiyang City, Guizhou province, sparked by a local government mandate requiring all residents to be cremated after death. This directive has caused widespread public dissatisfaction. Villagers argue that the government's push for cremation is financially motivated and violates the traditional Chinese custom of burying the dead. They believe this policy adds an unnecessary burden on farmers. In addition to paying for the cremation and purchasing an urn, many villagers also follow traditional customs of buying a coffin for a burial. During the protests, villagers angrily confronted government officials, saying, "If the Communist Party wants to dig up ancestral graves, they should start with Xi Jinping's family grave. Do you dare to do that?" Villagers further warned the authorities that if the government attempts to forcibly exhume bodies already buried, they can try it, but let's see if the people will let them get away with it. Look at this, see? This is the government coming to dig up graves and take the bodies for cremation. The government just wants to make money. Look, they're too scared to come. Look, there's a crowd here. It's packed. On the day of November 22nd, villagers from Mushan village in Shidong town quickly gathered after hearing that government officials planned to exhume the body of a recently buried person. At the scene, hundreds of villagers armed with sticks surrounded the grave, vowing to fight to the death if the authorities attempted to exhume the body. Men and women, all grabbing sticks. The government wants to do the cremation, but the people won't agree. The villagers also continued playing recordings at the scene, demanding the cancellation of the mandatory cremation policy. Late into the night, a large number of villagers surrounded the gravesite. Meanwhile, the government officials, who had previously threatened to enter the village and exhume the body, did not, as they were outnumbered. On the evening of November 22nd, a more intense confrontation erupted in Shuitou village, just a few kilometers from Mushan village. According to local villagers, when Vice County Mayor Chiang Yong demanded the family hand over the body of a deceased person, he physically assaulted the deceased sister, sparking anger among citizens. Enraged villagers quickly gathered, with numbers swelling from dozens to several hundred, surrounding Chiang Yong and the government officials and police accompanying him. The situation escalated into another clash. Video footage from the scene shows Chiang Yong promising to cover all medical expenses for the injured. The standoff continued until early the next morning, during which Chiang Yong made use of the chaos to flee. The incident has drawn attention from Chinese netizens, with many commenting, "If they want to cremate the body, fine. Just have the national leaders and central officials lead by live streaming the cremation of their own family's ancestral graves. The people would wholeheartedly support it." Another netizen wrote, "Dig up Xi Jinping's ancestral grave first. That's the most inspiring demand I've heard in 2025. Guizhou people." Similar incidents have also occurred in Yunnan. On November 5th, in Qingshan village, Yunnan province, over 1,000 villagers from surrounding areas gathered spontaneously to resist the local government's mandatory cremation policy. They prevented government officials from taking the body of the deceased and ultimately succeeded in carrying out a traditional burial. During the protest, villagers clashed with government officials at one point. However, now the CCP is not only targeting the ancestors of the people who have already passed away, but also threatening the freedom of their religious beliefs. In mid-November this year, local governments in Lingao County, Hainan Province, and Fuchuan County, Guangxi Province, forcibly demolished a local temple and a clan ancestral hall, leading to physical confrontations between villagers and government officials. On November 17th, in Meilan Village, Hainan Province, the local government mobilized a large force of demolition workers and police to surround the temple in the village, intending to completely destroy it. Video footage shows that, faced with a well-equipped demolition team armed with shields and batons, the unarmed villagers, while being forced to remove the statue, chose to express their anger through a local cultural ritual. As drums sounded, they threw rice at the demolition workers and police. During the pushing and confrontation, a female villager was violently shoved to the ground by government officials. It is reported that in Lingao County's local customs, throwing rice at someone symbolizes both driving away evil and cursing. The villagers used this act to suggest that the demolition team, by violating the sacred, would soon face misfortune. A few days earlier in Hezhou City, Guangxi, a similar fate befell a minority ethnic ancestral hall. On November 14th, the mayor of Lianshan town in Fuchuan County, accompanied by a large number of police officers and government officials, entered Jingtou village and forcibly demolished a Yao ethnic clan ancestral hall. For the Yao villagers, the ancestral hall was not only a physical space for ancestor worship, but also a spiritual symbol that united the entire clan. Yao women in the village made a strong effort to block the demolition, attempting to protect the building with their bodies. However, due to their numerical and physical disadvantage, the ancestral hall could not escape destruction. The day after the ancestral hall was leveled, the defiant villagers returned to the ruins and began rebuilding it brick by brick. In recent years, religious sites and folk worship facilities across China have often been cleared by the authorities, under the guise of illegal construction rectification. Some scholars believe that the CCP's campaign against folk religious sites has never truly ceased. merely changing the excuses for execution. From the Cultural Revolution's fervent destruction of the Four Olds to the recent demolitions of crosses, the flattening of mosque domes, and the arbitrary dismantling of rural temples and ancestral halls, the CCP has consistently targeted spaces that might foster independent spiritual cohesion outside of the party's control. The underlying reason is that totalitarian regimes cannot tolerate any form of spiritual unity independent of the party authority. Even a small space dedicated to ancestor or deity worship is seen as a potential challenge to absolute power. It is worth noting that on September 28th, the CCP issued the Regulations on Ideological and Political Work, which called for strengthening the promotion of Xi Jinping thought and atheism education, along with other brainwashing measures. Australian scholar Lin Song stated that the CCP wants to strengthen atheism education because it knows that there are movements like Falun Gong, Christianity, and other beliefs in China, which present a significant obstacle to the CCP's goal of ideological unity. In November, several other collective protests by citizens also took place. This is the Chinese Communist Party. They don't allow common people to live. On November 15th in Beihai Village, Liaoning Province, fishermen were suppressed by the police for opposing the local government's one-size-fits-all fishing boat suspension policy. Video footage from the scene shows that at least 4 fishermen were arrested. On November 12th, in Tongguang Village, Guangdong Province, villagers were engaged in a standoff with forced eviction personnel over a piece of collective land that had been privately sold by the village committee. The confrontation lasted all day, with several clashes between the two sides. On October 31st, in Qiongjong, Hainan, anger erupted among local residents after a subsidiary of Hainan Natural Rubber Industry Group illegally cut down villagers' betel nut trees. The crowd gathered outside the company building to protest, overturning vehicles and throwing stones at company personnel and riot police. As for the urban areas, it has become commonplace for CCP officials and their enforcers to oppress the public. On November 18th, a law enforcement video from Dandong, Liaoning Province, surfaced. The footage shows dozens of urban management officers rushing toward street vendors, loading their fruit onto trucks. The vendors pleaded desperately, but it was all in vain as they watched their entire fruit stalls emptied. Some questioned, what's the difference between this and bandits? The resentment among the Chinese public toward those in power has been building for years. But this year, the number of conflicts and incidents has increased. According to research by the Freedom House Foundation's Yiyan Network, protests in China have been rising steadily. Yiyan Network recorded 1,392 protest events in the third quarter of 2025, a 45% increase from the same period in 2024, marking the 6th consecutive quarter of year-over-year growth. Signs also indicate that the Chinese public has clearly awakened, with protests evolving from simple rights defense to a more conscious form of resistance. Recently, someone posted banners at the road sign in front of the Qiyang police station in Suiping County, Henan Province. The banners read, "Xi Jinping step down, stop organ harvesting, end the dictatorship and tyranny. CCP step down, stop human rights persecution." Other slogans included, "Eliminate the Communist Party, overthrow Xi Jinping, restore freedom of speech, stop internet censorship," along with a large poster titled, "Awakening to the Truth." On October 25th of this year, 2 anti-communist banners were hung on the streets of Sanlitun, Beijing. The banners read, "The essence of the Communist Party is an anti-human, anti-humanity cult, and it will bring endless disaster to China." And, "Lift the party ban, allow free party formation, free competition, and free choice. Establish a new China based on freedom, humanity, and the rule of law." Before the CCP's 20th National Congress in October 2022, activist Peng Lifa hung an anti-communist banner at Sitong Bridge in Beijing, which stated, "No nucleic acid testing, we want food. No lockdowns, we want freedom. No lies, we want dignity. No cultural revolution, we want reform. No leaders, we want votes. We don't want to be slaves, we want to be citizens." Along with banners saying, "Strike classes, strike work, remove the dictator, traitor Xi Jinping." The Sitong Bridge incident in Beijing also sparked the beginning of the White Paper movement in November 2022, which opposed lockdowns and totalitarianism. The White Paper movement led to the end of the CCP's disastrous dynamic zero-COVID policy. As the economy slows down, the CCP regime's crisis deepens, and the government is on high alert. Every year, there is a surge of migrant workers returning home for the Chinese New Year. With 3 months remaining until the holiday, many migrant workers who have struggled in the cities have already started returning early. However, they did not expect to be viewed as targets of government surveillance. On November 13th, the CCP's Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs held a meeting, urging rural areas to continue implementing the so-called Returning Migrant Worker Employment Promotion actions, aimed at preventing massive returns home and rural stagnation. A CCP official in Hunan recently revealed that after receiving instructions, local authorities began registering and visiting returnees, inquiring about their sources of income and family pressures. At the district and county levels, governments have been told to strengthen the monitoring of public opinion regarding migrant workers returning home to prevent collective incidents. Some overseas netizens have commented, "The young people returning home have seen the world. Who knows, they may be secretly planning to form anti-government organizations in the countryside to resist the government. That's why the government is nervous." U.S. economist Li Hengqing pointed out that China's economic decline, the housing market downturn, and the impact of the trade war have severely reduced job opportunities for migrant workers. In the coming years, rural areas are expected to see widespread extreme poverty. The CCP is now worried that this could take a bad turn and lead to anti-government resistance. Some leaders of peasant rebellions in Chinese history have now become taboo figures for the authorities. Last year, a statue of Li Zicheng, a leader of the Ming Dynasty peasant uprising, which had stood for 30 years at the Xiguan roundabout in Changping District, Beijing, was relocated. It is said to be moving to Li Zicheng's hometown in Shanluo City, Shanxi Province. The spirit of the Taiping Army statue, built in the 1990s and located at the Tianxin Pavilion scenic area in Changsha, was also moved last year. The central figure of the statue is Xiao Chaogui, a key figure of the Taiping Rebellion. Commentator Yang Ning stated that with the economy in decline and public resentment boiling over, Chinese society has entered an unprecedented period of turmoil. The CCP authorities are deeply afraid of a new peasant uprising and fear that the statues of Li Zicheng and the Taiping Army standing in public spaces could inspire the people. As a result, they ordered their removal. Has the CCP reached a point where it is on the verge of collapse? Wu Xiaoping, head of the Overseas Chinese Human Rights Lawyers Alliance, stated that the current migrant worker group may become a force of resistance against the CCP regime. Many of them have learned new skills and broadened their perspectives while working in the cities. They will come to realize that their current fate and circumstances are tied to the CCP's exploitation and the corrupted nature of its system. Wu Xiaoping stated that today's young farmers, if they rise up, have two characteristics. First, they are highly united. Second, they are very brave. This has been evident in incidents like the Jiangyou case and the farmers' protest in Hainan this year. Jiang Pinchao, president of a United States-based financial expansion real estate investment company, believes that rural populations still make up the majority of China's population. Young migrant workers, unable to find jobs in cities, return to the countryside only to find no land to farm. With no other options, they are left with no choice but to rise up. But this trend is already developing in that direction. Chinese political expert Yue Shan stated that, while there has not yet been a large-scale nationwide protest, local protests continue to emerge. As political repression and the economic crises persist, by 2026, there will likely be sparks everywhere. Whether this will spread nationwide and lead to the collapse of the regime remains uncertain, but everything is possible.